All righty, good afternoon. Welcome to today's installment of the Regional Report, a GPEC virtual series. Now, today's webcast will feature experts discussing the future of energy for Greater Phoenix and Arizona. Today, our panelists will discuss how their company is addressing the challenges that arise from our increasing demand for energy. We'll be touching on resource and load management and the innovations in this sector. Thank you so much for taking the time. My name is Eric Sperling from STN, and if you're not familiar with STN, we're a local media company based right here in Phoenix. Now, we do have a streaming network. You can download that from the App Store or Google Play. All of our shows and segments are dedicated to community growth, local leadership, and actionable solutions. You can always check out our website, stntv.com. There you'll find several STN shows and segments featuring GPEC President and CEO Chris Camacho. So always great to partner on these regional reports. Okay, some housekeeping items for you. Today's webinar will run for approximately 1 hour. Audience members are muted and without video. This webinar is being recorded and will be shared on the GPEC website and social media. Now, you may submit questions using that Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen there. Due to time constraints, though, we may not be able to get to all those questions. Should you experience any technical difficulties, please try logging out and logging back on. That usually tends to fix it. We do invite you to share this information on social media. Feel free to tag GPEC and use the hashtag #GreaterPHX together where appropriate. All right, let's introduce some of the panelists. We have 3 speakers joining us today. We'll be hearing from Erica Brinker, Chief Commercial Officer at ARRY Technologies, Judson Tillinghast, Leader of Product Development and Strategy at APS, and Bobby Olsen, Senior Director of Corporate Planning, Environmental Services, and Innovation at SRP. So first things first, I'd like to pass things off to Erica. As Chief Commercial Officer for ARRY, Erica brings with her over 20 years of diverse experience in business development, marketing, and brand management. In January of 2022, ARRY Technologies acquired one of Europe's leading tracker manufacturers, STI Norland, becoming the largest solar tracker in the world with manufacturing capacity, design, and engineering resources on 3 continents. Thank you so much for joining us, Erica, and I'll send it over to you.
Thanks so much, Eric, and thank you to GPEC for having me. If we go to the first slide, for those of you who aren't familiar with ARRY Technologies, we've been growing our presence here in the Phoenix area. Our production and manufacturing facilities are based in Albuquerque, New Mexico, but we've been growing our corporate presence right here in Chandler, Arizona, where I'm sitting here from. But we are a global company, and as Eric mentioned, we did acquire a Spanish and Brazilian company this year, really expanding our footprint. And I did just get back from Australia, where things like in Arizona are keen to grow renewables. And so we are truly a global company, and we did go public in October of 2020. But we've been around a lot longer, and in solar years, we've been around for 30 years, which makes us one of the pioneers in the utility scale solar. We have rolled out over 45 gigawatts of power to our customers, and we're really proud of the clean power that we're enabling our customers to provide. We also look at the CO2 that we're offsetting for our customers and our total impact, and I'll talk a little bit about that a bit later. Next slide, please. So we are a tracker technology company, and so that means that we make the hardware and software that actually hold the module. So we're module agnostic, whether you're talking about another local company like First Solar or another manufacturer. We actually make sure that the module is maximized, right? So you have fixed tilt, which maybe stands still. Our technology and our software is able to provide 25% more energy from the same module with a modest increase in costs. We have a competitive position globally in the US, Brazil, Spain, and other Latin American countries. And tracker technology, both software and hardware, is actually growing 36% faster than the rest of the solar market. And again, we're going to touch on a little bit on what the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, means to our industry, but it's something of a modern day gold rush because so many entrants are coming into the market, because it's not just good for revenue, but it's also good for the planet. And so there's a lot of opportunity to do well while also doing good in this industry. We also know that solar is the fastest growing and most popular form of generation in the US. And for those of us who live in Arizona, we know that this is an incredible export of our region. And so we're really proud to have sites here in Arizona and around the world. And what we're also proud of is the fact that up to 90% of our tracker products can be sourced in the US. And again, as we think about the implications from the IRA bill, this is a big deal because we are the only US-based tracker manufacturer that's growing in this way and that has this global footprint. Next slide, please. So we don't just care about what we're bringing to Wall Street and to our customers, we also care about our impact. And so we've joined the UN Compact, aligning to their 10 principles. We've also aligned with the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, as well as the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And so what this means is we're looking at our total consumption. We're making sure that the suppliers that we choose to work with align with our own values, and making sure that when we're deploying our energy, we're doing it in the most efficient, productive, and safe way possible for employees, for stakeholders, and for people all over the globe. We've also, as a public company, made a commitment to set some midterm goals that we feel are really meaningful. So it's not just about deploying our energy, it's about reducing our direct emissions by 30%. So doing more with less. We also want to make sure that we're using our own renewable resources. And so we're continuing to find ways not only to be more efficient, but also to make sure that we're using renewable energy sources ourselves. And then something else that's really important to us is diversity. And so whether we talk about racial, ethnic diversity, or bringing more women to the task force or to our own board of directors, it's something we're committed to changing and to continuing to make progress on. And so as a public company, we are trying to lead the way and set an example of the kind of public company that we want to be, and to set the tone for our industry as well. So we believe that renewable energy does lift all boats, and we are happy to be amongst our friends of wind and nuclear, etc. But we also think solar is the fastest, the cheapest, and the most consistent source of energy. And so we think this is really important. And this is something that this information here is something that we share with investors quite often, on the importance and the prevalence of solar, and how easy it is from the time a developer may decide to develop a site to actually bringing it online and assembling it and making it really productive. And so this is something that we are continuing to push the envelope on and make it more efficient. This is also why we'd like places like the Arizona Corporate Commission to really look at the renewable energy rules. The regulators recently rejected new rules that were boosting the use of renewable energy for the second year in a row. And so we were disappointed to see that, but we're also hoping that with more information that this is something that we can change over time. These proposed rules would have required our Arizona utilities to get 50% of their power from sources that don't emit carbon dioxide by 2035. And 100% by 2070. And we still think this is really important. We'd love to see that mandate of 100% clean power by 2050. We think it's really important, not just for Arizona, but beyond. And so we also want to tip our hats to those utilities that, even despite that defeat, are still making and keeping their commitments. And so we appreciate the pioneers here in Arizona that still know that our biggest export here, sunshine, we can do a lot with it, and we can do it efficiently, and we can do it effectively. And so a big shout out to those utilities that are pushing the envelope there and just doing what's right. And making sure that that as customers of utilities that we're not paying more, and then we're also getting the most efficient use of our natural resources. And then the last slide. So the IRA bill, I think a lot of people have seen much about it. The solar industry is on a growth trajectory that's really unlike so many other industries. We've had kind of a rocky year in Wall Street. We've had, recession talks kind of throughout the year, and you see many solar companies kind of leading the way from a revenue perspective and kind of really showing that there's going to be growth and opportunity in this industry. The numbers that we're showing you here, this 194% growth through 2026, this is without the IRA. We know, and we haven't really, as a public company, addressed with the impact that we think the IRA is going to bring, but we know that it's going to be meaningful over the next 10 years in bringing manufacturing to the US and also growing the solar industry. And we think Arizona should be leading the way. And we love that organizations like GPEC are continuing to court renewable energy companies to come here. We should be in Arizona thought leaders and really driving those conversations. We know that companies like Q-Cells are expanding in Georgia, and First Solar is continuing to build out new and additional manufacturing capacity. Even European companies and other international based companies are growing their PV cell production right here in the US thanks to the IRA. And so we think the future is really bright for solar, and we're really looking forward to what lies ahead. And we're also really looking forward to Arizona leading the country in renewable resources as well, and in the generation of renewable energy. So with that, I'll turn it over to my fellow speakers. Thanks so much.
Erica, thank you so much. And again, want to mention to the viewers that you can use that Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We'll get to some live questions a little bit later in the show. But right now, I'd like to welcome Judson Tillinghast, leader of product development and strategy for APS. Judson focuses on leading the development of strategies and programs to help customers and partners meet their sustainability goals, accelerate electric vehicle adoptions, and increase customer and grid resiliency through microgrids. So with that, welcome, Judson. I know you have a presentation prepared for us.
Yeah, thank you very much. Can we go to the first slide, please? Yeah, I like to start off with this really showing our core pillars. It's really everything we do, and all the programs we build are really built around these 4 pillars. So being clean energy, making it affordable for customers, ensuring we have reliability at all times, and finally making programs that are customer centric, so taking into consideration customer comfort and customer needs. Next, please. A few years ago, we had this question, is this something that's possible to do? Can we imagine a world with 100% clean energy? And that is something we're doing. And please go to the next slide, which tied into what our CEO started a few years ago called our Clean Energy Commitment. So this is our commitment to serve all of our customers with 100% carbon-free energy by 2050. It also has subset goals of being 45% renewable by 2030 and 65% clean also by 2030. And finally, accelerating the retirement of coal resources in our generation fleet. So those are the primary 3 pieces. The next slide really shows you how we're getting there. So we have a good idea of how we're going to get between now and 2030 of that commitment. But from 2030 to 2050 is really still something we have to solve, and technology is going to be a huge piece of the way to drive to our 2030 goals and beyond, finally to complete decarbonization by 2050. Next slide, please. So that's where we get into a lot of what my group does, is really focusing on that technology. Next slide, please. So this is really our flagship program. This really shows you the impact that customers can collectively make using a technology such as smart thermostats. So in this program, the rebates that we provide, participation agreements, can actually provide that product to our customers for free. And there's really no better way to use energy in a more sustainable manner and have more control over your electricity bill. Just due to air conditioners being a large source of your energy consumption, than a smart thermostat. So what this does is it runs an algorithm, and it looks how you would typically use energy on, let's say, 110-degree day. And if APS calls an event on that day, just due to grid stress, it makes mild changes, 2 to 3 degrees. So do 2 to 3 degrees of pre-cooling your house to keep you comfortable. And then in our core peak time frame from 6 to 8 p.m., might go 2 to 3 degrees more hot. In most cases, people don't even recognize it's happening. But part of that customer-centric core pillar is like if you are having a party and you think it's too hot, you can override that event, and you still are participating in the program. You still get your financial incentive. But these, we've got over 65,000 customers enrolled in this program, and that's resulting in over 100 megawatt impact. It's like taking several gas plants offline. So from just 2 to 3 degrees each direction on an event day has the same impact of removing an entire resource from the grid. So it's a phenomenal program that we continue to look to expand. Next, please. We also have some programs really focused on low and moderate income customers to help them be involved in the green and clean energy transition. So our APS Solar Communities programs, and customers get a bill credit for participating in this program, plus they get either solar on their roof, or you can get a solar covered shaded parking structure. This is a great opportunity, like I said before, to have folks that normally aren't able to participate in this evolution toward green energy to be a part of it. And so it's a program we're very proud about. Next, please. As everyone knows, battery storage is really accelerating recently. And this pilot gives us the opportunity to help bridge that cost for customers. So customers who do want to invest in batteries, it's a great way to save money on your bill by managing your demand. It can also keep your lights on if there's a power outage. But it's really important to have alignment between the grid and the individual customers, and there's value in that. So strategically of how that battery is deployed, giving us the information on how a customer uses the battery, and also in certain situations allowing us to make slight tweaks to that strategy can actually bring costs down and reliability up for all customers. So that's where that incentive comes through. And it's a voluntary program customers can enroll in to help bridge the cost of making that investment into battery storage. Next. I like to show this slide because it really just shows the transition that we're currently experiencing with electric vehicle adoption. As you can see, all these major car manufacturers have made real serious commitments over the next 5, 10 to 15 years of having, in many cases, half of their potential new cars being electric vehicles. So we really want to get ahead of this and build programs and strategies on how to help integrate EVs into the grid and how to help customers in that journey. Next, please. This just really shows you the EV adoption in our service territory. So about 25,000 EVs today, but we expect that really to increase as more affordable options are coming out every year. Next. This is really our flagship program called Take Charge AZ. APS pays for and installs 4 level 2 chargers at customer locations. And there's, it really helps with the adoption and giving people comfort that they can charge in the public besides just charging at home. There's also a DC fast charging component to that as well for folks that are looking to travel, maybe to different cities, to California, Las Vegas, etc. This is a myriad of some of the new programs and tools we have to help customers make that decision, give them the information they need to make sure they feel comfortable with they're going to have enough places to charge. They know what sort of chargers they need. We have rebates to help you get network chargers, which will help future-proof you for future programs that we develop. So we're really trying to provide customers the tools necessary to make that transition. Another program was relatively new, we're proud of, is our Green Power Partners. As you guys know, many corporates make goals to be, say, 100% renewable by 2025. This is a program we have available that customers can enroll in to achieve that goal inside of our service territory. So it's been very popular. We've had a lot of adoption over this year. And finally is our microgrid program. We have certain customers that need backup generation as a requirement. So we make an offering that saves customers money. It's more clean, it's more environmentally friendly, less pollutants. So it's a nice win-win for us to partner with our customers in the area that we know best, energy and resiliency. So this is a program that if a customer does need backup generation on site for their business, it's something that we can help share in the cost and share in the benefits of a cleaner, more advanced backup generator. And that is all.
All right. Thank you so much, Judson, for sharing APS's position on the topic. And lastly, we're going to be hearing from Bobby Olsen, having worked for SRP for the last 17 years. Bobby currently serves as SRP's Senior Director of Corporate Planning, Environmental Services, and Innovation, where he is responsible for helping establish and execute on SRP's transition towards a more sustainable resource portfolio. All right. Take it away, Bobby.
All right, thank you very much, Eric. And while most people in the Valley are familiar with SRP, I'd like to take a moment to remind everybody that SRP is one of the largest public power utilities in the country. We're actually responsible for service of not just reliable, sustainable, and affordable electric energy to more than 2 million people within the Phoenix Valley. We're also responsible for delivery of sustainable, affordable, reliable water to those 2 million people as well. And we are one of the largest raw water suppliers within the Valley, delivering more than 800,000 acre feet of water annually for the different cities to utilize and ensure that we have water there. And it's important as we think about SRP as both an energy and a water company, as we move into the next slide, it helps us to set the table for what SRP thinks of when we think about the energy mix of tomorrow. So when we think about 2035 and beyond, we really think about sustainability, both on a carbon perspective, but also on a water resiliency perspective, given our stewardship and requirement to maintain our watershed on behalf of our stakeholders and customers. Now, SRP's sustainability goals are centered around 5 key pillars that involve customers, employee engagement, involves our supply chain, our water resiliency, and carbon footprint. But when it comes to the focus of kind of where the future of energy is going, I would draw your attention to the 2 elements that are really important from a resource planning perspective on a carbon basis. SRP's objectives are to reduce our carbon intensity emitted by 65% from 2005 levels by the time we get to 2035. In addition to that goal that our board has established, we also have an aspirational objective of reducing our carbon intensity by 90% by the year 2050. And so as we conduct most of our resource planning and executing as we move forward, it's not just about what our goals are in 2035, but it's really keeping our eyes on the long-term picture. You'll see there, we're also focused on how we can kind of manage through the water impacts associated with the generation choices that we make as we move forward, recognizing that our generation choices can affect the resiliency of the water supply as well. So as we move forward, it's important to kind of level set about where SRP is today. When it comes to SRP today, we have resources distributed across 6 southwestern states as shown on the map here. And what I would note that's most important here is we have a very diverse portfolio of resources spanning across 5 different major categories of resources. But the one thing that I would note is we are rapidly expanding resources on our system, largely renewable and carbon-free resources over the past few years. And if I were to show you this picture from just a couple of years ago, you would see that this is a much more densely populated graphic than what we would have had before. And moving forward, we anticipate significantly more resources coming into the mix as Phoenix continues to grow. Now, what that picture kind of translates to from an energy perspective is looking at today's energy mix SRP. We serve about 30% of the energy on an annual basis. About 30% of that is sourced from carbon-free resources today. And in 2022, some of you may question, kind of what that means with respect to some of the aggressive goals that you'll hear from other utilities. Keep in mind that most of SRP's actions have been moving steadily towards progressing our goals, and the hard work and fruits of our labor over the past several years is going to be paying off as we start to get into 2025. So if we move to the next slide, talking about those goals and objectives, we know that by 2025, our goal is not just to continue to make progress and focus on 2035, but really setting achievable milestones for what it means for sustainability and carbon reduction within our service territory. So it's not just our generation component in terms of reducing our carbon intensity, showing meaningful progress towards our 2035 goals. It's also focused on making sure that we're enabling customers to transition their resources, their cars and vehicles to a more sustainable fleet using electric vehicles. We expect that we'll have nearly 70,000 electric vehicles in our service territory by 2025. And what I would say is we're well on our way and actually ahead of our goals just based on the pace of adoption we're seeing within our service territory. Our goals and actions continue to focus not just on carbon reductions, but also on water conservation. By the time we get to FY25, SRP will help to have conserved more than 120 million gallons of water within our area. It's also about enabling and making sure that it's not just the resources that SRP brings to the table. We know that customers have demanded that they want to be able to interconnect their own resources as well. And so it's our intent to ensure that those customers that want to interconnect resources have the capability of doing so with minimal friction by the end of 25 as well. We know that we've hasn't always had that lack of friction, and we've been focused on all of the efforts necessary in order to kind of continue to improve the process of interconnection. And then really thinking about what it means for water management down with those last two goals. But most importantly, from an energy mix, if we move to the next slide, thinking just about the near future, by 2025, SRP is going to have 50% of the energy on our system delivered from carbon-free resources. And by the time we get to 2035, which is shown here on this slide, we expect more than 75% of our resources will be, or 75% of the energy to our customers will be delivered from carbon-free resources as well. Now, how you get there is entirely dependent upon how we move forward. As we start thinking about what it takes to get towards that 90% aspirational goal for reduction of carbon, you're going to see a consistent theme of the different major phases that we see evolving in that progression. You're going to see solar in all three phases. As Erica mentioned, Arizona is a very sunny state, and there's lots of opportunities for solar here. SRP is bullish on this, but we're also practical with respect to what it means by 2035. The amount of solar that's we have planned on our system by 2035 can amount to more than 50,000 acres worth of land use dedicated to solar. If you stack on SRP's needs combined with APS's, TEP's, and other utilities in the state, that's a very significant amount of land contributed towards solar production. So solar is not the only solution. The solution also comes with less coal, it comes with more batteries, but it also has some technology dependencies that Judson alluded to with respect to being able to really go into that deep decarbonization. And that includes elements such as long duration energy storage. That's a term that's used for technology that's able to store energy, not just for 4 hours, which is more like a cell phone type battery, but more thinking about what does it take to store and hold energy for half of a day, days on end, or even seasons to adjust that need. As we get out into phase 3, we start talking about additional items that includes potentially hydrogen generation, hydrogen capabilities on the system. We talk about carbon capture sequestration. We talk about advanced nuclear within the fleet and starting to think about the pros and cons and implications there. So a lot of the technologies that are necessary to get to that 90% aspirational goal, reduction of carbon don't exist today. We know that there are several technologies that have been incubated and are working towards their progress. There's a lot of work that utilities need to do in partnership with some of those technology companies to really advance the ball and make sure that we have a clear path forward for how we're going to get to 90% or beyond. So what does SRP do? When it comes to SRP, we recognize the need and the importance to begin that focus and discussion on developing those technologies. One of the first elements that I would point to is long duration energy storage. We have the Copper Crossing Energy and Research Center that was announced this summer. And part of the element of that is looking at exploring long duration energy storage pilots that will help to ensure that we are advancing technology to meet those carbon-free needs. Another technology I would point to is pumped storage. Pumped storage is a hydro generator that is a long duration energy storage. It's less technology dependent, but also focusing on developing it as water is a scarcity here in Arizona and wanting to make sure how that might fit into our mix. And finally, SRP is working with APS and other industry here in Arizona as we help to develop and establish the Clean Hydrogen Hub known as the SHINE network, and submitting into the DOE for development of hydrogen projects to really ensure that we have a pathway to get beyond 2035 and then. And with that, I'll wrap it up and turn it back to Eric.
All right, Bobby, thank you so much. And excited. We have a lot of questions coming in, so forgive me. I'll just kind of rattle these off. Cold, and I think our first one probably for Erica here. What impact do ground-mounted solar panels have on carbon sequestering vegetation? And is there potential for installation on commercial rooftops, schools, hospitals, or other public buildings and areas? Erica?
Well, we'd like to see solar on all rooftops for sure. However, there is a growing trend called agri-PV or agrivoltaics, which actually brings together the best of both worlds, which is farming and solar. And so does it work for every kind of vegetation? No, but the thought process is that you can actually preserve lots of different kinds of crops, whether you're talking about pollinator crops, vegetables, and also small to medium sized livestock. This is incredibly popular in places like Australia, for example, where you'll see a lot of sheep kind of roaming very large farms. They're also keeping the vegetation in check to make sure that the vegetation is actually maintained. So you actually don't have to get rid of the vegetation to keep the PV in place. There's even organizations like the American Solar Grazing Association that's trying to grow it here in the US. And so it is a growing trend, though the US is a little bit behind the rest of the world. But there's lots of advantages to it, including, reduced installation costs for your site. It actually increases the solar performance because it keeps the vegetation can contribute to lower soil temperatures, making those modules more productive. There's also reduced electricity costs from the agricultural land managers / farmers. And it gives them another opportunity for different kinds of crop production since it's providing partial shade, as well as diversification in their revenue stream. So lots of upside to agrivoltaics that hopefully you can have the best of both worlds in both farming and solar.
Great. Thank you, Erica. And I guess this question would be for Judson. I know you mentioned some of the incentives and programs earlier. What incentives and programs exist for commercial, especially office and industrial, to transition to renewable resources to power their buildings?
Oh, yeah. So we still have net energy metering for our commercial and industrial customers. So solar developers can partner with our customers and put rooftop systems, shaded parking systems. So that's one way. The other way is to, like our APS Solar Communities programs, that there are limitations on who is eligible for that program. But like 501c3s, for example, do qualify. Some multifamily, low-income multifamily locations can qualify as well.
Bobby, how do utilities generate revenue as more customers go solar on their own? Home solar owners often pay minimal fees for power.
Yeah, that's a great question and something that SRP has historically struggled with in terms of how do you kind of avoid cost shifting and ensuring that you're not necessarily shifting the burden of cost to lower income customers. It's a real challenge, although as we look going forward, it's, thinking about the services that are provided from the underlying grid. It's not just energy. And as you think about that backup service, interconnection, reliability aspects that go along with it, I think those are value-added services that will continue to be valued, even in a world in which you have significant penetration of solar behind the meter on residences and other buildings.
Erica and Judson, did you guys want to weigh in on that at all? You're good?
Oh, good.
Good.
Question coming in. I guess, Judson, you were talking about batteries earlier. How are used or dead batteries recycled? Are they able to be refurbished?
That's still a nascent industry. I know, like with cars, there's plenty of places that take old batteries. So there are companies that I know do refurbish them. But the long-term recycling, I think, is still being sort of figured out. I think we're going to see an influx of batteries amongst utilities. We've got at least 850 megawatts on the way. I know California and any other utilities in the Southwest are investing in batteries, so they're not at the end of their useful life yet. But that's definitely a concern to make sure they're disposed of properly for environmental reasons.
You know, Eric, this is an area where SRP has actually worked and partnered with the Electric Power Research Institute to ensure that we are driving innovation and research, looking at total life cycle of battery technologies and making sure that as we start to deploy batteries in our system, we're thinking about end of life of those batteries, how we might recycle those. We're excited to see that there are some upstart companies here in the Valley that are focused exactly on recycling of large-scale lithium-ion batteries. And we'll continue to partner with industry and research institutions in order to help make sure that there is a viable way to minimize waste and ensure that we can maximize the benefit of those batteries, both for utility purposes and beyond.
All right, Bobby, thanks for that. Question coming in regarding the Inflation Reduction Act. Erica, you were talking about that, and I guess I'll kind of go around the room here. How are your organizations preparing for the Inflation Reduction Act? Which provisions are the most attractive? And Erica, I guess since you spoke on it, I'll let you kick this little roundtable off.
Yeah, sure. You know, for our customers, the EPCs who kind of install, you know, they're looking for domestic content. So from a win for domestic manufacturing, U.S. steel, aluminum products. You'll see a lot of domestic content being pushed through this initiative. Because we are a manufacturer ourselves, the IRA actually establishes two different credits. One's a 30% investment tax credit for eligible investments and, you know, facilities and equipment. And also a production credit for certain components based on your volume. And so these are huge incentives in addition to really driving, I guess I would say it makes solar pencil better for developers and the long-term asset holders. And it's going to make solar scale much more quickly. I think that that's probably what we're most excited about.
Judson?
Yeah, I mean, the IRA and as well as the BIL, there's a lot of opportunities for new technologies in there. I know, you know, there's production tax credits for solar and wind, but there's also a hydrogen discount. And we've seen a lot of interest in our service territory with folks that want to produce hydrogen as a clean energy fuel for the future. The BIL also includes lots of money for electric vehicle infrastructure. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities that the utilities can sort of collaboratively go after to help build out new infrastructure for electric vehicle charging and solar and batteries. So it's a very interesting time. There's a lot of opportunities with the BIL and the IRA.
Bobby, how about you? What provisions most attractive?
You know, there's a couple provisions really attractive to SRP. As public power, SRP has not historically had access to any of the tax credits that have been floating around in the renewable energy space. And we've largely had to work with other renewable developers in order to provide projects to SRP for this space. The significant benefit for SRP with the Inflation Reduction Act has to be the direct pay benefits for us. It's now we have the opportunity to kind of develop resources on par, which gives us more control over dispatch and how we integrate those resources into our system. And how we might deploy those resources would be foundationally different than a developer who really is focused on a very specific revenue stream that might have positions against how we need to operate that system for our entire system. And so it has to be direct pay benefits. If I were to put in a second element, it's ensuring that there's investor tax or the investment tax credit access to standalone grid charge batteries. I think that's another significant and monumental component of the Inflation Reduction Act that really is going to benefit all the utilities in Arizona.
All right, Bobby, question coming in specifically for you. Are there certain areas in Arizona that have the potential for wind power? And are there many of these facilities in place already?
So SRP actually has contracts for a little over 200 megawatts of wind power today, utility scale wind. Arizona is not as doesn't have as much utility scale wind potential as, say, like neighboring states like New Mexico. But we do have projects here, and we see projects kind of in eastern Arizona and the Mogollon Rim that might be better to develop here. But the real question, especially now that you start to see major transmission infrastructure getting permitted and moving into construction phase between New Mexico and Arizona, is going to be how does that wind fare against some of the New Mexico wind that's going to be accessible.
Right. Erica, we've got a solar question. Step one of solar energy is absorbing that energy. Step two is storage. We have plenty of sunshine here in Arizona, but what is being done to address storage needs as we move into more storage technology used here?
Not being a storage expert, I'll answer that the best way I know how, which is going to some post-COVID trade shows this year, because we've all been locked up for the past couple of years. Just walking the floor, I think you see so many different technologies now. You know, it's kind of like computer memory, and we're on a path here. It's going to be slow to start, and the industry is obviously nascent, but you're seeing a lot of new entrants, and more importantly, you're seeing a lot of investment. I think next you'll see consolidation and then more investment into better technology. So I'm hopeful that technology will continue to evolve and improve, but we're on the right path for sure.
Right. Judson, question about the grid. How will you update the grid to add more power and intelligence to support massive electrification?
You know, rate design has a lot to do with that, of providing the right incentives people of when to use power. So, you know, right now, most of our residential rates, we're looking at 4 to 7 p.m. During the on-peak time frame. So we make energy less expensive outside of that window to incentivize people to shift what they can. So, you know, it's not that we don't have enough energy to charge your car. But when you charge it, makes a really big difference on the cost to you from when you're charging it and how to help manage the overall cost of the grid. If we can keep that peak down through managed charging solutions, through battery consumptions, through the proper rate design, then we'll make energy costs lower for everybody utilizing these technologies. And that's what we're really focused on.
So kind of a follow-up question coming in there. You know, Arizona has one of the most reliable power grids in the U.S. What makes the power grid so reliable?
It's the way we plan. So our resource planning team has an integrated resource plan that's really looking at over the next 15 years. So it's incorporating all the potential load growth we were looking at. It also looks at, you know, power plant retirements over time, and that they're procuring the right resources we need to keep that reliability. I know during the Texas freeze-off, a lot of utilities went into what's called an energy emergency, and we were very proud. We were one of the few in the Southwest who did not. So, you know, our folks take reliability planning very seriously, and I think that shows a result of that planning.
All right, Bobby, we got some water questions coming in. You ready? Hydropower is a big part of Arizona's energy mix today. How is the water scarcity in the Colorado River and other rivers impacting that?
Well, certainly that's going to be a big issue for the desert Southwest. You know, there's a lot of focus on water and water supply for end use customers, but really there's a pretty substantial impact when you think about the amount of generation that is tied to hydro generation on the Colorado River, specifically the southern portion of the Colorado River. You're talking about more than 3,000 megawatts of capacity that could be unavailable depending upon how the precipitation conditions persist. A lot of utilities, so SRP is a benefactor of that particular system. We are working very diligently to try and mitigate risk associated with that, and that's through trying to source and provide energy from alternate sources so that we can minimize at least the impact on the energy side of the equation. It's certainly something that I think is going to have a pretty profound impact if we do see implications there, especially for some of the smaller, more rural areas that are dependent upon that generation.
I guess talking about impact a little more, what should Valley residents anticipate given the possibility of the Colorado River falling below that necessary power generation level for Lake Powell and Lake Mead?
Well, with respect to the Valley itself, SRP has some robust mitigation plans in place. We've been looking at and planning as if those resources were unavailable over the next few years so that we really understand what is necessary from an installation perspective. Now, we've had some challenges trying to get some resources cited, but that's nothing that nobody here, either on the panel or in the audience, is not accustomed to dealing with right now with respect to supply chain and everything else. But we are working very diligently to make sure that we have those resources.
A question for all of us. We've touched on this a little bit, but how are we preparing to meet the energy demand with the growth of Greater Phoenix? And Eric, I'll kind of start with you there.
Yeah, what we hear from customers is that they're actively looking for more sites to develop. I think there's a couple things that maybe stand in our way. The speed of permitting is still quite slow for developers. And so we need to make sure that that permitting process is a lot quicker today. The grid improvements, while we don't have as big of grid challenges, maybe here in Arizona, nationally, there's a huge deficit and disconnect between what we need to transmit renewable energy and what actually exists in the grid today. And so massive improvements need to be made, and commitments have been made by the Biden administration to do that, but the work actually has to get done, right? So it can't just be theoretical. And so I think one other thing that maybe a lot of us don't realize is the days of those big, wide, flat sites for solar don't really exist that much anymore. And so we've been developing our own technology to ensure that those undulating terrains can still be developed with little disruption to the terrain itself. And so it's a combination of all those things so that we can speed the development of renewables and scale it faster.
Judson, same question, preparing as and keeping pace with the growth of Greater Phoenix.
The biggest challenge right now is really related to capacity, and that's ensuring we have energy in those core peak hours during the summer and our hottest days, at 6, 7, and 8 o'clock at night. There's a misalignment between when solar is producing at its peak, which is around noon, versus when all of our customers are using most of their energy is when they get home from work and they turn on their air conditioners, anywhere from that 5 to 8, 9 o'clock time frame. So that's really the focus. So that's why you'll see APS and SRP when we're buying a solar resource, it's got 4 hours of battery storage attached to it. That's why the IRA, as Bobby was pointing out, is really important, that we can also just build a standalone battery now and get an investment tax credit, where previously it had to be solar plus storage together. So that's why you'll see a lot of that type of investment in the Southwest, because it makes the facility more expensive, but the value of what it can provide to the grid is more valuable. So it's a cost and value proposition. So I think you're going to see a lot of those types of resources that can produce in that peak time frame is what we're all looking to get to ensure reliability.
Bobby?
Yeah, I would say that there's a couple different things that I would identify there. The first one is kind of courage to the planning process, recognizing that from a political perspective, it's really important that we focus on kind of carbon-free resources moving forward, but maintaining the reliability and expanding and keeping the focus not just on energy, but on capacity and ancillary services. It's going to require some difficult decisions in terms of what type of resources can help fulfill that mix to maintain that reliability. With respect to kind of making sure that we stay ahead of it and be prepared for it, I think I would lean more towards closer and tighter integration of planning processes between resources, distribution, and transmission. SRP has introduced an integrated system plan, which goes beyond the integrated resource plan, looking at kind of our system as a whole and trying to figure out how best to site and install resources in partnership with customers to make sure that we really are advancing the ball collectively while maintaining the opportunity for economic growth in the valley.
All right. So as we get ready to close things out here and we wrap up, we're going to give everybody an opportunity. We're going to kind of go around the room, get some final thoughts. We've been talking about the future of energy, some great presentations early on in the webinar. We've heard some great questions come in. So Erica, we'll start with you. Just some final thoughts here. As we've talked about, the future of energy here in Arizona and Greater Phoenix for the last hour. What are some final thoughts you can leave us with?
Yeah, no, we're proud to be part of the growth of renewables in Arizona, but we'd like to see Arizona be more aggressive, and the Arizona Corporation Commission get on board with our utility partners to make sure that we really are leading the way. We have a huge opportunity here. I'm happy to see that APS and SRP are are making this important part of their mix, but we really need everybody to get on board with renewables, because it's not just smart for Arizona, it's smart for our future.
Judson, some final thoughts?
I think it's really important just to highlight the more we push toward sort of this decarbonization is we really need coordination and collaboration with all of our customers. And I think technology is the way we can make that easy for customers. Like the smart thermostats, once again, $100 investment, but we can get this massive grid impact from a resource like that. EVs, you can make that transition, but let's work together on when's the right time to charge. We can help you save money doing that. We can also help ensure that the energy that is going into your electric vehicle is mostly clean or green energy. So it's really that coordination and knowing that that we can collaborate together to really drive this decarbonization effort.
Okay, Bobby, some final thoughts here.
All right. Well, what I would say is it's really a privilege to kind of be in the space at this time, because there has never been a more exciting or dynamic time to be within the energy space, as we really think about completely redesigning the grid and what customers are used to when it comes to meeting the needs and the requirements. So when we look at all the technologies that we're focused on and moving forward with, it's going to require investment, it's going to require lessons learned, it's going to require stops and starts, and just it's an exciting time, and I hope everybody is really excited and engaged as we move forward in this space.
Well said, and I want to thank you guys for your thoughts and perspectives. Before we say goodbye, I do want to quickly remind our viewers to join GPEC and partners at the next regional report that will be coming up Monday, December 19th. That'll be from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock, and we'll be talking about how mega events such as the Super Bowl, the Waste Management Phoenix Open, the Festival, the M3F Music Festival, how these big mega events impact our economy. So keep an eye on your inbox later this week for an invitation to RSVP. All right, Bobby, Judson, Erica, thank you so much for joining us today. And we thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time on the Regional Report.